Welcome students, I am your Acharya sir, and this time I am again present with, with yet another prose piece, The Sound Machine. Our mode of discussion would be as it had been, that is, to find out region questions because answers or complete the sentence. The Sound Machine, as you all know, is by Roald Dahl, and with whom you have already been acquainted in your ICSE poetry, the television. And you know, he is a polygenius. He did not do any such thing, and the list of that would be very short. He did many such things, and his autobiography is a very fine piece of writing if you have chance to read it. So let's go straight to the questions one by one. This is The Sound Machine by Roald Dahl. Question 1. Klausner was that hasty through the front gate, through the garden, to the wooden shed, his makeshift laboratory for the sound machine, because he wanted to keep his experiment with sound a closely guarded secret. Question 2. There hangs a foreboding and terror about the sound machine because it is described as a black box about 3 feet long, the shape of a child's coffin. Question 3. Klausner picks up a piece of paper that lies beside the box and studies it carefully because it contains the diagrams and the mechanism of the sound machine. Question 4. Klausner begins to twiddle the 3 dials in front of the sound machine because he wants to watch the movement of the mechanism inside the box. Question 5. Klausner is an eccentric, self-centered scientist because he keeps speaking to or asking himself, smiles all alone while at work, and makes quick movements of hands and curious movements of mouth. Question 6. Klausner's concentration is very intense because his movements are quick and there looms a sense of urgency and strong, suppressed excitement about the way he works with his sound machine. Now, question 7. Dr. Scott drops in at Klausner's place because he happens to be passing, finds no one in the house, and wanted to know how his throat is behaving. Question 8. Dr. Scott begins to feel tension in the room because Klausner still has his hat on while at work inside the room. Normally, one doesn't wear a hat when he is inside. They hang it in the hat stand. Question 9. Scott has become inquisitive because the black box has complex mechanism and he wants to know what his strange patient is up to. Now, one thing, students, if the question is asked in the present tense, you should better try to answer it in the present tense, because in literature, so far as prose and poetry is concerned, you can write either in the present tense or in the past tense, but not an admixture of the two. And if the question is asked in the present, try to answer it in the present. And if the question is asked in the past, try to answer it in the past. Question 10. Klausner is shifting from one foot to the other and tugging at the lobe of his ear because he is having trouble about how to begin explaining the sound machine and its underlying principles. Question 11. Human ear can hear everything because it works within a limited range, and a very low pitched or very high pitched sounds escape human hearing. Question 12. Any note for more than 15,000 vibrations a second or more escapes human hearing because our ears are not tuned to that, but a dog's ears have. Question 13. Klausner is becoming more and more animated because he is discussing his fond subject of sound, acoustics. That is, acoustics is the study of sound. So you better write sound, or you may write it is acoustics, as you please. Now question 14. When informed about the sound machine deals with sound, Scott wonders because Klausner gets enough of that sort of thing all day in his work. That is, we hear that much of noise all day long that there is no need. Scott thinks to examine it, to investigate it in further details. Question 15. To Scott, Klausner has about him a quality of immeasurable distance because it seems to him Klausner's minds were far away from where the body is. That is, that body is there, but the mind is traveling far, far yet further. Question 16. Klausner pointed to a fly sitting on a small roll of copper wire on the workbench because he wants to prove to the doctor, though they didn't hear anything, it might as well be whistling, barking, croaking, or singing on a very high note or high pitch. Question 17. As enumerated by Klausner, the black box is a sound machine because it is designed to pick up sound vibrations that are too high pitched for reception by human ear and to convert them to a scale of audible tunes. Question 18. Klausner took out the sound machine into garden because the reception would be better and he wanted to test its functioning. Question 19. The sound machine is often compared to a radio because it has knobs in the front of which one controls the volume and yet another moves a needle across a large central dial like the wavelength dial of a radio. Question 20. Klausner made his improved version of the sound machine Klausner made this improved version of the sound machine because a simplistic one made earlier, though suggested the existence of sound vibration in the ear, failed to allow him to hear those noises, and it is designed to pick up high-pitched sound and make them audible tunes. Question 21. The average human ear cannot quite hear the sound made by a bat because it is a fairly high-pitched sound, about 30,000 vibrations a second. Question 22. While testing the sound machine in the garden, Klausner said little words of comfort and encouragement to himself because he was afraid that the machine might not work and also afraid of what might happen if it did. Question 23. While hearing to the sound machine, Klausner was conscious of a curious sensation because it seemed each of his ears were connected to the head by a steep wire, and ears were going up and up to the forbidden region of ultrasonic sound where ears had never been and had no right to be. Question 24. Though no one was in sight except Mrs. Sanders, his next door neighbor, Klausner heard throatless metallic sound twice in his machine because it arose from the pain inflicted by her while snipping the stems of roses. Question 25. Klausner requested Mrs. Sanders to cut one rose more because he wanted to make sure that the sound was produced by the snipping of the roses. Now come to question 26. Mrs. Sanders wishes to rush indoors or call her husband because she thought Klausner had gone completely crazy. Question 27. Though somewhat weary and alarmed, Mrs. Saunders pleased Klausner's humor of cutting a rose because she knew him to be a peculiar but harmless person. Question 28. Klausner said that Mrs. Saunders would not believe him because he explained to her a rose, when plucked, makes a high-pitched sound of 132,000 vibrations a second. A rose bush is alive and feels pain. Question 29. Klausner picked two more daisies because he wanted to make sure that the cry of rosebush was a genuine one. Question 30. Roald Dahl invented his own vocabularies like twine, spore, plinkment because in our known vocabularies because in our known vocabularies there is no such word to describe inanimate, high-pitched, emotionless, metallic notes produced by plants. Now let us move on to question 31. To Klausner, trees respond and are not immune to cuts, wounds, or pain because he gently worked that blade loose of the beech tree, touched the gas of the tree to close the wound, and lovingly lulls the tree that it would be cured. Question 32. When the blade cut deep into the beech tree, the noise was extraordinary because it was a harsh, noteless, enormous noise, a growling, low-pitched screaming sound, lasting long and gradually fading, but not quick and short like the noise of the roses. Question 33. Klausner telephoned frantically to Scott at the early hours of the day because he had taken Scott into his confidence about the machine and he wanted him to hear the noise made by the tree when subjected to pain, and it was driving him mad. Question 34. The noise of the tree was worse than any known human noise because it had a toneless, throatless, frightening quality. Now to question 35. Klausner decided not to go to a wheat field with his sound machine because he could not stand the chorus of scream of 500 stems being cut every second by the mower, and he would never eat bread after that. 36. As regards eating food items, Klausner found no fault with the apples because they fall off naturally when they are ripe, but not plucked or torn like potatoes, carrots, onions, or wheat? Question 37. Klausner, along with the doctor, took the sound machine to the park with an axe because he wanted a big tree to test the variation of screaming sound, and there wasn't any big tree in his garden. Question 38. The doctor could not check the sound produced by the beech tree when struck at the base because a great branch 60 feet long fell crashing and the doctor ran for life, ripping off the earphones. Question 39. The doctor told that he didn't know what he heard when importunately insisted by Klausner because he was more interested to save his life than mark the sound produced by wounded beech tree. Question 40. The doctor Scott told Klausner not to be silly because he pointed to the last gas the axe had made in the tree trunk and wanted the doctor to stitch up quickly. Question 41. The doctor did not, in the writing, the doctor is missing. The doctor didn't accede to Klausner's request because he could not stitch through wood. Question 42. Klausner may be regarded as an eccentric environmentalist and a nature lover because trees are to him living organisms that can be soothed by loving words and treated with iodine to heal the wound. 43. The doctor asked Klausner not to be ridiculous because he ordered the doctor to paint the gas of the tree with iodine so that it might heal. Question 44. In spite of himself, Dr. Scott painted the wound of the beech tree with iodine because Klausner's eccentricity got the better of him. Klausner got so much excited and he has such a rough, vigorous attitude in his treatment of the doctor that the doctor was rather frightened. So, Klausner's eccentricity got the better of him and he tightened the grip of the handle of the axe in a threatening manner. Question 45. With all his oddities and eccentricities, Klausner is lovable because the other two characters, Dr. Scott and Mrs. Saunders, knew him to be a strange but harmless, and both of them just humor him. Now we are towards the fag end of our discussion. It is question number 46. The idiosyncrasies of Klausner verge on absurdity because he soothes a tree very lovingly. He tries to bring the edge of barks together like human skin, wants wound to be stitched or at least dabbed with iodine, and wants the doctor to pay a second visit to monitor the healing process. Now this is the last one. 47. Klausner is a conservationist because he loves nature, loves trees like human beings, and cutting or jabbing trees is an offense, though at times necessary for experiment. These are all my own way of treating the questions, and I think I have almost covered the entire story wherefrom such a why question or because answer may be picked up. Thank you for listening.